Through the chair, Treasurer, no need to repeat yourself. I just deem it's very important to set the record straight that Fitch's rating still has the credit worse at this point from when the governor took office, and S&P and Kroll are the same. So these agencies are not in agreement. Again, that's to correct the record. So I'm going to go to my question. Non-recurring revenue has totaled $13.2 billion over the past 3 years, which makes each budget more and more difficult, you'd agree, to maintain long-term funding. You mentioned that the use of the ARP dollars, you're very mindful of avoiding long-term needs. However, there's also mention of the ARP being devoted to student mental health and education. Would you define these as not long-term needs?
And that was a broad category that we would look at for whether that's building institutions that could help provide services. I don't know what, I mean, it would depend on negotiations and discussions with the legislature and the governor. It was more a question of trying to avoid not long-term needs, long-term expenditures, so that if you are, you're making sure that if you're providing the service, you're providing it in full, whatever that, lead remediation, take the pipes out, replace them with better pipes, things that are, now, we all know the effect of lead in water and the long-term effects it can have on people. I'm talking not about that, which would be in the same category as mental health services, obviously a long-term issue that would need to be addressed through the years. I'm talking about more sort of one-time pieces of those problems, things that could be met with expenditures that don't create long-term funding obligations that we'd need to make sure we have the revenues to support.
Thank you. We can discuss at length on the record, just for the record, written record, what those one-shot needs would be.
Mm-hmm.
And in my view, we use expenditures, we allocate that for needs. So with all due respect, Treasurer, I feel you're part, we're splitting hairs here in terms and playing some semantics between needs and expenditures. So with that, if these resources are not there, how do you plan to keep up with the spending? I heard a commitment not to have any tax hikes. How about, are there any plans to cut spending?
Well, one way, and I'll defer, you'll have all of my colleagues from the cabinet coming through here to sort of discuss. I know the Department of Corrections has some spending reductions they're proposing from Treasury's perspective. We are constantly looking at areas where we historically see growth in the health benefits field. The defeasance and debt avoidance that our Office of Public Finance has been working on for the past year has, as we've mentioned, reaped significant savings. So that is something we are always looking at. But when you come out of sort of the fiscal situation that many New Jerseyans saw during the pandemic, this budget has, for the past couple of years, reflected the need to invest and not cut services. We were one of the last states to recover from the Great Recession of 08-09, and that was because services were cut rather than invested in. So this administration and the legislature have focused on investing resources when people have needed it most, and I think the fact that we are emerging and that our GDP is improving, that our revenues have improved significantly, showed that was the wise course.
I know that property tax relief and assistance for opioid abuse and prevention was the first on the chopping block, and I would, again, for the record, say those are long-term needs that we need to continue to invest in for our residents. One final question with regard to the tax hike for employers, which is 20%, and then the 10%. Would you describe that as a more affordable New Jersey for its residents?
are you talking about unemployment insurance? Yes. Okay. Yep, and that is that is something we welcome a discussion on. If that is, we obviously, there are resources that we'll know more about in May, but, we leave it up to discussion for the legislature and the governor to determine whether that would be a use of, when you look at the spectrum of needs in the state, whether that would be one area where funds could be directed. I mean, as I mentioned, we have funds in the ARP, which I think we wisely did not spend all at once, and so I'm sure the administration welcomes any discussion on potential uses for the funds.